My name is Jasmine Whitaker. I'm 75 years old and I worked for decades as a geospatial risk analyst for a wildfire insurance company in Boise, Idaho. Even in retirement, I still consulted on major projects. I was presenting a loss exposure model to 3 executives when my phone lit up beneath the conference table. The first message was from my daughter. "We reorganized the house in your name. You owe us $250,000 for raising you and everything we did." Before I could process it, my son wrote, "If you don't sign the final papers, we'll tell everyone you abandoned us when we needed you." Then my younger son sent, "Thanks for the fresh start, Mom. You're the best." I nearly missed a question that could determine whether my company approved a $40 million contract. I steadied my voice, finished the presentation, and walked out without letting anyone see my hands shake. In the elevator, I read the messages again. They had not asked for help. They had announced a debt, as if my life belonged to them. What would you do if the people you raised decided that parenthood came with an invoice? And how far would you go if they used your identity to collect it? I didn't argue. I didn't call. I opened a secure folder on my phone, saved every message, and smiled because my daughter had just confessed to something she did not understand. 3 hours later, she began calling nonstop. On the 7th call, I answered and heard her screaming, "What the hell did you do?" She thought I had ruined her plan. She had no idea I had only pressed one button. Before I tell you what that button triggered, and why my entire family gathered for what they believed would be my surrender, this is the kind of hidden truth we expose on Hidden Truth Revenge. Tell me what time it is where you are, and where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels before the truth finally catches up with them. I let the phone ring until my daughter left a voicemail accusing me of being cruel, selfish, and ungrateful. By the time I reached my apartment, there were 22 missed calls, 4 voice messages, and a post in our extended family group claiming that I was about to lose the family home because their successful mother had forgotten where she came from. That was how my daughter fought. She never began with facts. She began by assembling an audience. Her name was Ella Whitaker, and she had spent years watching me teach that reputation mattered more than truth. My son, Douglas, rarely raised his voice. He simply stood behind her and repeated whatever made her demands sound reasonable. My younger son, Cody, had mastered a different skill, failing in ways that inspired rescue. At 48, he had already abandoned multiple business attempts. His newest fresh start was Northstar Roaming, a luxury recreational vehicle rental business he planned to launch. He had no proper licenses, no insurance approval, no secured storage, and no real experience. What he did have was a glossy logo, a social media page full of borrowed photographs, and siblings who believed confidence was more valuable than competence. I called my daughter back and recorded the conversation legally. She demanded I explain exactly what I did. I said, "We used the equity in the house," she replied. "The lender needed your income and credit attached because we didn't qualify. It's temporary." "Did I sign anything?" There was a pause. "You signed documents years ago." "What documents?" I asked. She said family papers and told me not to play games. I asked her to send every page bearing my name. Instead, she said Cody had already paid deposits on imported RVs and would lose everything unless I signed the final authorization by Monday. When I told her I had never agreed to guarantee a large loan, she began crying so suddenly it sounded rehearsed. "We fed you. We kept a roof over your head when you needed us. We helped with everything. Do you think all of that was free?" That question did not wound me the way she expected. It clarified something I had resisted admitting for years. My daughter did not see sacrifice as love. She saw it as credit she could collect later. "Children don't sign repayment agreements for being raised," I said. "And parents don't forge their mother's signature to finance their brother." Her crying stopped. "Watch what you accuse us of." "I'm not accusing you yet, I'm asking." My son took the phone. He said the paperwork was practically complete, that refusing now would embarrass them, and that Cody deserved the same opportunity I had received. I reminded him that I had built my career through hard work, scholarships, and paying my own way. He replied, "Exactly. You know how to recover. Cody doesn't." There it was. The family philosophy condensed into 6 words. I was required to suffer because I was capable of surviving. Cody was protected because consequences might break him. My son then threatened to contact my former colleagues and tell them I was financially irresponsible. My daughter said she had already drafted a post describing how I had abandoned my own children. Cody joined the call and laughed when I asked how much of the loan he planned to repay. "Once the business takes off, all of us win," he said. "Besides, you have your pension and savings." He had no idea my work had involved predicting catastrophic loss, identifying manipulated data, and documenting patterns people hoped no one would notice. I said, "Send me the documents, all of them. I'll review everything before Monday." My daughter exhaled with relief. Cody called me the best mother in the world. My son warned me not to involve outsiders. I ended the call, forwarded the recording to a private email address, and checked my credit report. The smile disappeared from my face when I saw a mortgage-related inquiry, a new revolving credit line, and an address where I had never lived. This was no longer a family argument about money. Someone had been living inside my identity. The following morning, I drove north before sunrise and reached the family house shortly after noon. I had lived in that cedar-sided home for many years. But nothing about walking through the front door felt warm. My daughter was waiting at the dining table with a folder positioned neatly in front of the chair she expected me to take. My son stood near the windows, hands in his pockets, while Cody leaned against the kitchen island wearing a North Star roaming jacket. "Sign the highlighted pages and this can be over," my daughter said. I did not sit. I opened the folder and photographed every document. The loan package identified me as a co-borrower and claimed the house was partly held in a family trust of which I was a beneficiary. It listed my income, my past employer, an old checking account number, and an electronic signature dated recently. The signature looked like mine from a distance. Up close, the final stroke curved backward in a way mine never did. "Where did you get this?" I asked. My son said I had signed a general authorization years earlier. That claim pulled a memory. Years ago, they had asked me to sign forms to update family accounts while I was busy with work and life. I had signed without receiving the complete packet. Standing at the table now, I understood that first signature had become the key they used to open every door afterward. "You kept blank signature pages," I said. My daughter's expression tightened. "We kept family records, and you reused my signature." Cody rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic. We aren't stealing from you. We're investing in the family." He explained that the $250,000 would cover deposits on RVs, storage property, marketing, and operating costs. I asked whether he had signed a personal guarantee. He said the lender preferred my credit profile. "So you get the company, the vehicles, and the profits while I get the debt." I asked, "You get equity later. Where is that written?" He looked at his sister. "She told me family did not need contracts with one another." I placed my phone on the table and played part of the previous night's recording. My son's face changed when he heard himself threatening my reputation. My daughter lunged for the phone, but I picked it up first. "You recorded us," she demanded. "I documented you." The difference terrified her. She began listing everything they had supposedly done for me over the years. Each memory had been converted into a line item. I asked whether they had kept a similar account for Cody's failed businesses and expenses. Cody called me jealous. That was when my son finally admitted the house had already been pledged as collateral and that they had received an initial bridge advance of $62,000. Some of it had gone toward Cody's deposits. The rest had covered urgent family expenses. "What expenses?" I asked. Nobody answered. My daughter tried to redirect by saying the loan could still be canceled if I signed a revised agreement. That made no sense. If the transaction were legitimate, my signature would not be needed to cancel it. I closed the folder. "I'm taking copies." My son blocked the doorway. I said I only needed the photographs, already stored safely. Cody stepped closer and whispered, "Don't destroy this because you're bitter that I'm finally doing something big." I looked at him and remembered every time I had been told to shrink my needs so he could expand his dreams. "I'm not destroying your business," I said. "I'm removing the stolen foundation underneath it." My daughter warned that if I walked out, she would tell every relative I had chosen money over blood. "Then make sure you spell my name correctly," I replied. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed with an automated alert from the lender. Someone had attempted to access the loan portal using my credentials. Seconds later, another message arrived from Cody. "Sign by Monday or you'll regret it." He thought the threat would frighten me back into obedience. Instead, it gave me the first piece of evidence showing he was not an innocent beneficiary. He knew exactly whose identity was holding his future together. I called my sister Rebecca from a gas station. She was the only relative who had ever stood up without demands. Instead of comforting me, she became silent when I described the loan. "Come to my house," she said. "Don't call them again until you see what I have." When I arrived, she locked the door and placed a metal cash box on the table. Inside were copies of bank transfers and a handwritten agreement from years earlier showing how they had used family money meant for me to cover Cody's troubles. They had built a system in which my name, savings, and achievements existed to absorb his consequences. Rebecca showed me a recent bank statement and evidence they had been watching my credit. I asked why she had never told me everything. Tears filled her eyes. She said my daughter had threatened to cut her off from the family. Silence didn't keep the peace. It kept their system alive. I contacted a consumer protection attorney named Melissa Grant. Melissa reviewed everything and told me not to warn my family. The single button I had pressed after the first messages was the Report Unauthorized Activity option inside the lender's portal. That action suspended the loan and triggered a review. My daughter's panicked calls began when the funds were frozen. We gathered login records, a verification video showing my daughter holding my documents and claiming I had authorized her, and more proof. It was enough to unravel years of family mythology. My daughter had always called me the cold one, yet she was the person who looked into a camera and calmly pretended to sell my future. For the next days, I behaved exactly as my family expected. I told my daughter I wanted one final family dinner to find a solution. She interpreted that as surrender. Cody increased his offers. Melissa prepared everything. We held the dinner at Rebecca's house with security cameras. I invited my children, Rebecca, 2 relatives, and the family accountant. My daughter arrived carrying a pie and a leather folder. "Sign this and we can put everything behind us." The agreement tried to legalize the past and finance the next step. I read every page while Cody reminded me of his deadline. My son told Melissa she should leave because this was a private family matter. "She stays," I said. I played recordings. Evidence was shown. Then the lender's fraud investigator, Aaron, entered and announced that the loan had been classified as suspected identity fraud. The remaining funds were canceled. The house could enter foreclosure. My daughter gripped the table. "What have you done?" "I removed my name from your crime." Their united front collapsed. They turned on each other. Cody shouted that I had destroyed his only real opportunity. "You had opportunities," I said. "What you never had were consequences." The dinner ended with reality in the room. The lender's investigation moved quickly. My forged guarantee was removed. My credit was cleared. My professional reputation was protected. 6 weeks later, things returned to stability for me at 75. The consequences for them were severe. The house was sold. They moved into a small place. Cody's business collapsed. Bankruptcy followed. My daughter contacted me from new numbers, moving from rage to bargaining. I forwarded every message and did not respond. My son sent a letter claiming weakness. I did not answer. Cody called once asking for money for another program. I told him no. Consequences were finally delivered to the correct address. Rebecca and I grew closer. The truth mattered. 1 year later, I stood presenting a model on ignored risks becoming catastrophic. Blood does not create unlimited access. Raising children is not a debt. Love is not a debt collector. Boundaries often feel cruel to people who benefited from your lack of them, but their anger does not make those boundaries wrong. I did not save their plans or the version of our family that existed only when I obeyed. I saved the part of myself they had trained to disappear whenever someone else demanded more. My daughter asked for $250,000 as payment for raising me. In the end, the most valuable thing she gave me was the moment she forced me to calculate the true cost of staying. I smiled because I finally understood that I could refuse the invoice. So tell me honestly, if your own family forged your name, threatened your peace, and sacrificed your future for the child they always protected, would you forgive them or close the door forever? Thank you for listening and watching until the end. All characters, conflicts, and events are fictional and created only for entertainment and educational purposes. We hope it reminds you that when people use your forgiveness as permission to repeat the same behavior, you are allowed to change the rules. Forgiving someone does not mean giving them unlimited access to hurt you again. This is hidden truth revenge.